Hello and welcome back into the Reading Corner. Today we are going to be taking a look at the third volume in the season's quartet by Karl Ove Knausgaard called Spring. And we took a look at autumn and winter in a previous video, so please feel free to check that out. I'll link to that down below. Unlike those other two volumes, Spring takes on a much more narrative and focus structure, which I'll break down in the next section before getting into my final take and rating on the book. Well, Knausgaard uses a narrative structure. It's not chronological. And he starts out by explaining how he is taking care of the kids basically on his own. His wife is not at home. And he is getting them ready for school in the morning. He seems overwhelmed and tense. And he is that day going to take his daughter up to visit his wife at the hospital. Now, what we don't figure out until quite a bit later on in the book is why is the wife in the hospital and why is he taking care of the kids right now on his own? And much of the plot in the story will revolve around that question. As Knausgaard goes through his daily routine, getting the kids ready and smoking a cigarette in his private room and visiting a friend for coffee in the morning before driving what seems to be a few hour drive to the hospital that his wife is at, he intermittently takes us back in time, expounding upon the story of how him and his wife decided to have their fourth child while they were on vacation in Australia and presumably conceived in that location, and how his wife got a bout of really serious depression while she was pregnant, and she was lying in her room for days on end with the shutters closed and really just in what would largely be called a funk. And during this time, Knausgaard is trying his best to coach his wife out of it, to help her as much as he can. But she seems to be in a really dark place. And part of it might be pain from the pregnancy, but a large part of it is mental. And she's going to a psychiatrist and things along those lines to try and help her. One day, she's sleeping till late in the morning, and Knausgaard walks into her room around 10 or 11 in the morning to try and wake her up. And no matter how hard he tries, he can't wake her. And so he is really freaked out at this point, and he doesn't want the kids to know. This is a thing where he's trying to hold things together for the kids. So he calls a neighbor and has them take the kids away for the day and watch them. And then at that time, he also calls an ambulance to come to the house just as the kids are leaving. So his wife is driven to the hospital. She ends up being okay. The baby ends up being okay, importantly, as well. But she is very sorry, and so is Knausgaard, feeling quite guilty as well. At this point, Knausgaard's wife in the story decides to stay in the hospital. And she stays in the hospital up until the point where she has the baby, and then she stays in, I think, a psychiatric ward in that same hospital for a few months thereafter. And so she kind of misses the first couple months of her child's life, but at the same time, Knausgaard is taking the child as regularly as he can to visit the mother in the hospital. And eventually, she comes home and everything seems to be well. They're happy and doing a lot better than before. Knausgaard leaves the reader with the point that no matter how painful things feel, no matter how dark they seem to be in the moment, there is always hope, and you should always hold on to that hope. For my final rating, I give this book 5 stars and 89 out of 100, and it seemed to be, to me, a welcome transition from the first 2 volumes in this series in that it had that narrative structure. The other 2 seemed to lack the central theme and purpose that this one really seemed to have that was strong inside of it. And not only did it have that more fluid cadence. It also had many deep moments and musings along the way that are typical to the other books in this series. At times, I did feel that the book may be a little too personal, especially when it came to Knausgaard's relationship with his wife and really his frustrations with her. But at the same time, I recognize that it would be difficult to tell this story while leaving that stuff out at the same time. And I think that this is a pretty effective exploration of living with people who struggle with intense depression and even suicidal ideation, and also a unique situation of one parent having to hold up a lot of the parenting duties for an extended period of time. I hope that this piqued your interest, and maybe you'll even pick up a copy of this book that does have cool artwork and shelf appeal on top of the interesting story contained inside of it. And if you did like this video, please hit the like button to support the channel, and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.